fellow Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to episode 215 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my longtime co-host now at ESPN. He is at _Eric_Robinson on the Twitter, and also just named Eric Robinson. Eric, how are we doing tonight?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. Can't complain. There's a little winning going on within the Falcons organization.
Little bit of winning. I've noticed, it's easier to get everyone on the show when we got some dubs to talk about. It's not like pulling teeth so much anymore. It's been nice to see this team really fight. In every game this year, they've been far better than I expected. And I think they've hit some of the things that we talked about in the offseason that were going to be necessary for them to become a better team and become competitive. Like you were on in the offseason and we talked about it. We need the defense to be closer to 20th instead of 30th. That's one step for them being competitive. And then the other thing is they have to figure out how to run the ball. And they've done both of those things. They are 19th in scoring defense, and they are number 3 in the NFL in running the football, and they are sitting at 3-3 despite playing what looked like a very, very difficult opening schedule. Not all of those teams have ended up being as dangerous as they maybe appeared going into the preseason, but the Falcons have been in every single game, probably should have won the Saints game, should have had a chance to win the Bucs game. We know what happened with that one. But, a win against the 49ers here, a big upset victory. Obviously, the 49ers injured going into this game, but they were still the number 1 defense in the league. They had been missing several guys for multiple weeks, like Armstead and Kinlaw. So it's not like they were the number 1 defense and they lost all those guys going into this game. No, the big loss obviously was Nick Bosa, but the Falcons really made the 49ers defense look kind of silly out there with just some really creative stuff. So how are you feeling about that win?
My thing is, okay, yes, they were missing a ton of starters on defense. That absolutely should be highlighted for sure. But they still had their horses on offense. They still had Kittle. They still had Ayuk. They still had Debo. And yet they were scoreless for 2.5 quarters. So what's the excuse there? I mean, they still were only able to muster up 14 points.
Yeah.
I'm not – actually, they went scoreless longer than that. They went scoreless for 3 quarters, right? They scored both of those.
Yeah, they didn't score in the first. Mm-hmm. It was both in the second, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's you still had, granted, there was no Trent Williams, but not having Trent Williams didn't really, I don't think, cost them any points because I think the Falcons only had, 1 sack. So it wasn't as if, the offensive line was decimated and Garoppolo wasn't able to do anything. They were able to do that. All 3 of those guys had great games. To be honest with you, you had 2 touchdown catches. I think Debo had 7 catches. It took him a little while to get going, but I think it's a win you take. You never apologize for a win in the NFL. They're so hard to come by. And you keep moving. Yeah, they missed starters, but they had an opportunity to win it. That defense that was decimated by injuries relatively kept them in the game. Did it not?
It did.
It wasn't a blowout. So
no, I mean the Falcons really they took advantage of that defense. Mainly the run defense. I mean, the Falcons didn't have the most efficient day on the ground. I think they were only at 4.3 yards per carry, which is well below average for them, actually. The Falcons were averaging 5.1 yards per carry going into this game, but
things are changing, man.
Yeah, it's nuts that 4.3 is that's a very bad day for the Falcons right now. Yeah. But 168 yards on what was the number 1 run defense. For context, they were allowing just 3 yards per carry going into this game over the first 5 games of the season. So really, I think it's really a sign that this Falcons team is going to be able to run the ball against pretty much everyone. Obviously you'll have good games and off games and that sort of thing, but they also did this, the 49ers are down Nick Bosa. The Falcons are down Cordarrelle Patterson, who was their number 1 offensive weapon for the first few games that he was in the offense. So this run game, even without Patterson, has been quite dangerous. What do you attribute that to?
Preparation and offensive line play. With also sprinkled in just the mentality that they carry with them and with, you know, in every game. It seems like mentally they approach every game as if we're going to run the football. You know, we're going to run the football, but you're not going to stop us. And I think that is a different mindset that the team has not had in quite some time. And I'm enjoying watching it, to be honest with you. I mean, they literally every game they've been in, and I've tried to point this out to individuals. They've been in games where they had a large lead, they were down 3 scores, where it was back and forth in the second half. So they've seen a little bit of everything throughout a game circumstance, and yet they still stuck with their bread and butter, which is running the football. And so far, so good. Defenses know it's coming, but defenses have had trouble really stopping it, especially when the one thing I appreciate about them is the fact that they know that they're a run first team. They're going to run the football first, but they look at, you know, being down 3 scores and they're saying, we're not going to change our philosophy. We're going to stick with it, and it's going to get us back into the game. Sometimes you die by that. Sometimes you actually scratch and claw your way back into games.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what happened to the 49ers in this game, and that really the crux of this game and what they did against the Browns too is that they just beat their opponent at their own game. Like the Browns, of course, want to do that same exact thing where they pound the rock and play defense. The Falcons did it better than them in that game. Against the 49ers last week, that's the 49ers bread and butter. They want to play great defense, and they want to use their, you know, top 10 rushing game to wear you down, and the Falcons did that way better than the 49ers did.
They're not even using like big name free agent running backs or first round picks. Like, people are pointing out the fact that they're going up against, you know, certain defenses that have injuries, but they're still running the ball with a 5th round rookie and an undrafted free agent. What does that say?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think it speaks to the run blocking, right? That has turned around so drastically in just one offseason with most of the same personnel. I mean, obviously Drew Dahlman wasn't the starter last year, but he was here. He was an option to start. And then left guard is the big change, where Elijah Wilkinson has come in and really stabilized that spot. I wouldn't say he's been this, you know, Pro Bowl impact player, but going from Jalen Mayfield, who was just an active liability, to Elijah Wilkinson and Colby Gossett even for a game, those guys just have been night and day better, providing sort of league average starter play. And I mean, if people forget, like the Falcons Super Bowl team had a blueprint similar to this, where they had a really good left tackle, a good right tackle, I think they had good left guard play actually, and then just sort of a league average right guard and Chris Chester and that team obviously had a great center in Alex Mack, but you know, not necessarily premium players at every spot, but players that were good at what they needed to do. And for this team, being good at run blocking seems to be the most important thing when you're only throwing the ball 14 times in a game against the 49ers. So, very interesting stuff.
I appreciate, you know, Arthur Smith, and I think this is something that they're starting to you know, develop as the season goes on. I appreciate the fact that he understands when it comes to Marcus Mariota, less you ask of him, the better. You know, this past week, he only had 14 pass attempts. I felt going into that Niners game, I felt like he needs to be 20 or under in terms of passing attempts. I can't recall exactly how many he had against the Bucs, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't that great of a number either.
Yeah.
And that's what he sees, and that's what he's going with, and I'm fine with that. I feel like the offense has a better chance of operating if Mariota is not chucking it 25, 30 times.
Yeah, against the Bucs, he had 25 attempts, but it was only 14 completions. So
see, it kind of sort of gets when you get to that point, it's like, all right, the passing game is really not going to kill us. I mean, it's really not going to do as much damage as we want. We need to be selective with that. I feel better with him throwing the ball 15 to 20 times. Yeah, I think that's a safe formula.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if they unlock that, the thing that the offense is still missing is the deep play action part of it, which is really important. We know for Arthur Smith, his offensive scheme in general, and we've seen them, like when the Tennessee offense for those 2 years was really lethal and really dangerous. That was when they had Ryan Tannehill chucking it deep off of play action in a dominant running game. And the Falcons don't quite have the deep play action passing game like where it needs to be. Not yet.
Let me ask you a question. Do you incorporate a small package for Ritter?
I mean, what Arthur Smith, I guess, was asked about that, right? And I think he said right now they weren't planning to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's always weird when you put in another quarterback. I
can understand.
Yeah, I guess it probably depends on how Mariota continues to play, right? Like, if he had a bad game against the 49ers, we'd probably be, the Ritter chance would be like louder than they've ever been. But because he had a really good, efficient game and was just this really dangerous runner that was absolutely, his runs were key to like 2 or 3 different drives staying alive. You know, that's going to quiet that all down. And really what we need to see from Mariota is the deep passing game click at some point. Because if he does unlock that part of his game and this offense starts to get to where it needs to be with the passing game now too, and not just being this very limited passing game, then you're talking about this top 5 offense, because they're already 8th, like they're already top 10 offense. So
yeah,
it's
8th
in scoring. Yeah, they're 8th in scoring. Yeah,
8th in scoring. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's in yards. They're actually 23rd on offense, which is really funny but they've been really efficient with their scoring. They've gotten, I think, a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown, but I mean, hasn't been like that crazy in terms of the other scoring. But
that's the feather in the cap for them: the fact that they're able to run the ball effectively, and the fact that they're efficient with their possessions. They're efficient on offense. They're one of the more. I tweeted it out this morning. They're 3rd in the league in offensive DVOA. And they're ahead of like the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are 5th or something like that.
Yeah,
so, the efficiency is something that's paying off. And like you said, if he's able to open up that passing game, man, that's a whole different layer you got to deal with. You know, we'll see. Do you think it's reps? Do you think it's just? Do you think he can throw his way out of this funk? Or do you think this is really who Marcus Mariota is, and that when it comes to the passing game, there needs to be, you know, few plays in between when it comes to attacking certain defenses? Or do you think he can really open this thing up if he just gets more reps and more time?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't think we know really for sure. I mean, I think there's certainly a chance that, as with all passing games, like you just need a lot of reps to get that deep stuff really synced up and timed up and everything. And I think there's a chance that that's the case here. I also think it could just be that that's never going to be a strong suit of his particular game. And that might be why we eventually see Ritter. But if he keeps it up as a runner and even if he can increase the passing game a little bit, and just make it a little bit more efficient or a little bit more volume when they need it, and just hit 1 or 2 deep shots a game, like that changes everything. Like if you just add 1 or 2 deep shots, like 30, 40-yard pass plays to what we have now we're in the 200s in passing yardage every game, and that's like now like you're basically a normal, you know, passing offense, and that's probably a hyper efficient passing offense as well. And I think that's all you really need to get this where it is. But the question remains, like, we haven't seen the deep stuff work yet. And if it can't work, then we need to know, like, you know, it's very important for this offense being as dangerous as it should be. And is that a function of Mariota not being able to do it consistently, or is it more a Falcons just they haven't gotten it down yet? You know, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's kind of early to know. But look, I mean, I think if Mariota does unlock that and does start hitting those deep shots, and this offense continues to improve, especially in the passing game, then I think you're talking about, like, is Mariota a guy that we do bring back next year and that sort of thing. And that's certainly within the range of outcomes. I know you and I are both very high on Desmond Ritter too. So, you know, it just, if they're winning games like they are now and they're going into the playoffs, you know, the clock on Ritter gets longer and longer every time they win a game and Marcus Mariota looks good. Like, I don't think they're going to force Mariota off the field to play Ritter if Mariota is leading them to the playoffs and playing well.
No,
So it's up to sort of Mariota, and I think it's up to Ritter too, because I think if Ritter becomes ready to go, and they think that Ritter gives them a better chance to win, then they'll probably put in Ritter at that point. But I don't know when or if that will happen. I don't know if it'll be because Mariota struggles or something else, or God forbid there's injuries. But
right.
The fact that we have Ritter waiting in the wings of this offense, as a break glass in case of emergency option, as a potential injury replacement, if this team is competing for the playoffs, that's valuable too. Even if he doesn't, like, it's a good situation for the Falcons if Mariota is playing so well that we don't see Desmond Ritter.
It is.
It's complicated it makes things complicated, but it's good complicated, because then it's like, if Ritter's just amazing in practice and you really want him to play, but Mariota's playing great, now you're talking about, do we have a trade asset in Marcus Mariota that's valuable enough that we consider moving him, or do we, just sort of wait and see with Ritter and just continue to ride Mariota for one more year and see what happens? Because despite them drafting Ritter, it's just a 3rd round pick. Like, it's not like he's a 1st rounder that's like, you're like, okay, when is he going to play? Like, as much as we like him, if Mariota's playing great and they're in the playoffs, like, the timer's not as strict and demanding as it would have been if this was like a Kenny Pickett, who you take in the 1st round and you're like, okay, when is he going to play? Like, when Mariota was playing poorly in the Bucs and the Browns games, it was like, okay, well, when are we going to see Ritter? But if he continues to have more games like San Francisco, then it's going to be like, okay, well, are we going to see Ritter? So there's a lot of football left, I guess, and we've sort of seen both ends of the spectrum. But again, like, what do we do when the Falcons get up against an opponent where they have to throw the ball more? And so far we've seen, and I was talking to some Bengals fans about this today, that, like, they think that the Bengals are going to be able to score and sort of take Atlanta out of their element. And they're like, oh, well, the Falcons can't come from behind. And it's like, well, you haven't watched this team, because they've come from behind multiple times. They came back and threatened the Rams down 28-3. And against the Bucs, they were down 21-0 and came back in that game, should have had a chance to win it. So, like, despite them actually being this run-heavy offense that you would think can't come back, they've already done it and been in the position to win games twice in 6 games. So it's sort of a weird offense.
I had a little back and forth yesterday with Bengals fans about this, because they were saying the same thing to me. Oh, if the Falcons get in the hole, they're going to be forced to pass, and they're going to try to get in shootout mode, and that's not an issue that you want, blah, blah, blah. Cool. All right, whatever. My whole rebuttal to that was the fact that they've already been in 2 games where they were down 3 scores in the second half. And most teams would say, we need to throw it. But for some reason, they're not. Like, they're in both games against the Rams and the Bucs, they stuck with the run game, and it opened up in the second half, which led them to get back into the game. So even if this is the case with Cincinnati, like, I tried to tell Bengals fans, like, they're not going to tell Marcus Mariota to go to 4 wides and throw the ball. Even if they're down 3 scores to the Bengals in the second half, they're probably still going to run the football.
Yeah.
So
they're going to keep running, no matter what.
And they argue with me like, no, that's not what they're. Oh, okay, guys. All right.
Have you seen what they've done? Because they haven't really ever stopped running the football, like, ever. They had 40 attempts last week.
They were down 3 scores to Tom Brady, and they said, we're still going to run the football. Y'all really think, like, even if they're 3 scores down to the Bengals and Joe Burrow, they're just going to say, all right, we're not going to run it anymore? Like, no, they're still going to stick to their formula, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all about, with Atlanta, like, they're going to try to grind down your defense and that sort of thing, and they've done that effectively against most of the teams they've played. So I've been very impressed with how they've managed that so far. Against the 49ers, really tough defense, just ground them down, and 160 yards on the ground. Even more impressive game against the Bucs. I felt robbed of an opportunity to potentially steal that game and be first in the division. But I mean, I think it's been very, very refreshing to see this run game actually take off. And they've done it without Cordarrelle Patterson. We've seen pretty much everyone who's taken a handoff have success. Tyler Algier Caleb Huntley's looked great. Avery Williams only has 9 carries, but he's like at 6 yards per carry because he just seems to always take off for a big run every time. So it's fun to watch this team, and it's. Do you think this is like this offense right now that you're seeing? Hard to believe this is like their end game offense, right? Because when you see the high level investments in Kyle Pitts and Drake London, you have to think that they're planning to throw the ball more than 14 times most games. But I mean, what do you think about the way this offense is constructed? And is this just a temporary thing, or do you think this is more of like this is going to be their game plan even when the passing game gets going? Like they're still going to lean mostly on the run game in that scenario.
I think it's mainly still going to be a run heavy approach. I think there's going to be a little bit more wrinkles thrown in. And I don't want fans to think this is going to be the final product because let's be quite honest here. They don't have their ideal quarterback under center yet, but he may be in the building. He may just not be ready to play yet. They can stand to add another weapon opposite Drake London. And maybe if they wanted to, maybe they can add another horse in the stable in the backfield. Depending on if they wanted to, upgrade in the draft or something like that.
You talking about you know who?
I'm not gonna say it.
You know who?
But I think this is, even when those components are put together, I think there's still going to be a run heavy approach. But like I said, I think it's a few more wrinkles are going to be thrown in there. You probably want to see more deep passing once they finally get that guy up under center that they want. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that, yeah. But I expect this. I expect the offensive mentality and approach to have a lot of similarities to like San Francisco's or Philadelphia's, where yes, they got weapons on the outside, but you're really not going to see those weapons being utilized until the run game gets going. When that run game gets going, it's going to make things a lot easier for the weapons on the back end, or your skill position guys. So I think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I agree. And okay, so this is a tangent, but this was something that I talked about on another show today. And I think that it's something that is unlikely, obviously, but is interesting enough that I think it's worth talking about over the course of the year and following. And that's what they do at quarterback next year. Right now, obviously, it's let's see what we have in Ritter. Let's see what we have in Mariota. We've talked about various scenarios for both of those guys. We've also talked about, do they dip into the draft again for someone like a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud? I personally think drafting another quarterback is not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that they may not be interested in another quarterback. What are your thoughts on the, sort of 3-point shot, half court shot of the Falcons being aggressive for a quarterback like Lamar Jackson next offseason, if for some reason he was to become available? Because, I mean, could you think of a better quarterback for this offense than Lamar Jackson? I mean, I can't.
All right. Here's my theory for those who haven't heard it yet. All right. First of all, let me go ahead and say everyone in the building loves Ritter. They think Ritter can be the quarterback of the future. Okay. But given how they rolled out the red carpet for Deshaun Watson this offseason and how they were willing to literally go to sell their soul to bring in a guy like Watson to be their quarterback. Keep in mind, that started because Watson expressed interest first.
Yes.
They didn't really pursue him until they found out, like, oh, okay, he thinks he wants to play, may want to play here. If Lamar Jackson, if they just get any type of signal, some type of, I don't know, a TikTok video, a little blurb in a blog or something, I don't know. But if they get any type of notice that there's interest from Lamar Jackson, I honestly think they're going to shoot their shot. Whether they get him is going to be a different story. Yeah. But I honestly think they're going to shoot their shot.
Yeah.
Because I think this offense is tailor-made for him. Like, oh my God. Like
Yeah.
he did.
Perfect.
Oh
Couldn't
my
possibly be a better fit.
God.
Like,
Right. And
uh,
and he knows that.
yeah.
Players pay attention now. Don't think they're looking at Atlanta. Oh, that's no. Players pay attention. Lamar sees from afar. Damn, I can do that. I kind of
Yeah.
like how they operate there.
I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. I still think it's a very low chance of happening, but
It's a low
we
chance.
saw how aggressive Atlanta was to go after Deshaun Watson,
Well,
which I think you and I both agree was a terrible decision to pursue him. Not necessarily that going aggressively for a quarterback was a bad move. Right. Him in particular was a bad move, but
right.
So
it wasn't smart.
But, I mean, I think we should be completely prepared for them to do it again for a quarterback with way less baggage and, in my opinion, a better fit for this offense even.
But it has to start from Lamar. It's not going to be a situation where they're going to go into the offseason and say priority number one is let's see if we can sign Lamar. I think they truly feel they have their quarterback in the building. However, if a former NFL MVP who is an elite quarterback and just having him under center gets you a seat at the table. If he sits here and says, I would like to play in Atlanta, I can see myself playing in Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt to say, oh, okay, all right, let's sit down and talk. What you want?
I mean, I'll have that conversation, right? You know, I do think they'll have interest, and like I think what Fontenot would say is like, you know, we have interest in every great player that becomes available, you know, and he's right. I'm sure they do their diligence, but yeah, I think it depends on a lot of factors. First of all, does he even get out of Baltimore? Because I think they'll just tag him if they can't get a deal done. Now that doesn't mean that they won't trade him at that point, but yeah.
Just agree to that. He doesn't. I don't know if he's going to agree to that. And like you said, yes, there's still a sign and trade possibility, even if they do. I feel like with everything that's going on in Baltimore, they've been doing this for it's been 2 years now.
Yeah.
That they've been negotiating a long-term deal. It hasn't happened yet. What else does Lamar need to do in order for him to be re-signed at this point?
It sounds like it was coming from him. Like he didn't want to re-sign in Baltimore.
Well,
to some extent.
I think he did. He did, but I think he felt lowballed, which understandably they offered him less money than Kyler was offered, and he's a better quarterback than Kyler. Yeah. I think he's looking at like what $250 guaranteed is like the starting point, which I do think though, not having an agent in this situation hurts the negotiations. Because it's literally just Lamar and the team.
Yeah.
So there's no agent in his ear that's saying, hey, man, look, you can't keep shooting down these guaranteed offers that they're giving you. You may not get this from other markets. This may be your bet. That's not in his ear.
Right.
So
yeah. And
I'm not confident that they're going to re-sign him, honestly.
No, I'm not either. I think there's a chance that I don't think he walks, obviously. I think at best he's tagged and traded. Like they can't just let him leave the building. Like that's not going to happen.
No, they can't.
But, you know, a tag and trade where he's demanding to get out of there, that could be something else entirely. And look, maybe Marcus Mariota plays great. The Falcons make the playoffs, right? You flip Mariota for Jackson and a couple firsts. You know, that way the Ravens have another bridge quarterback they can lean on. I mean, they have Tyler Huntley too, so it's like
I thought about this because you look at Denver's situation. What Denver did with Seattle, they sent 4 draft picks and 3 players for Russell Wilson, which was
ridiculous.
That whole is nuts. That's crazy, and it looks worse by the day at this point. I feel 2 firsts and probably 2 seconds will get them talking. I still think they're probably going to need a body thrown in there, a player thrown in there. I initially thought about Calvin Ridley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Falcons still own his rights. They may not want to pay him that $12 million 5th-year option next year because they probably already feel he's not in their long-term plans. why not just send him to Baltimore, let him negotiate a new deal in Baltimore, or let Baltimore say, hey, we'll give you a 1-year prove it deal. And if you come in and you play like an all pro, like we expect you to, we'll pick up negotiations after the season.
Yeah.
He gets a new pick. He gets a new chance at life. He gets a new team, new city, in a scheme where I don't think it's going to be. I don't think he's going to be putting up 100 catches and double-digit touchdowns every year.
No,
but it's a team that needs him, that can use his weaponry.
Yeah, and like it's interesting to think about, because the only reason it's on my radar is because we just saw them try to do the same thing for Deshaun Watson, who, for reasons we've discussed, much more risky, much more not even as good of a fit, I think, for this offense, where Lamar is like Mariota on steroids, and not like literally, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's like the S version of Mariota, as a passer and a runner. And like, I think you could see that, that Jackson would just be the perfect fit for this offense. And they don't need him to run the ball like 10 times a game. Like, they're not going to make him just be this running quarterback. I think they're going to utilize him way better than the Ravens are by letting him throw more. And like, when he does run, it's going to be these, like what Mariota's doing, just picking up chunks all the time.
Yeah.
So
I think the Deshaun situation, not only with the Falcons, but the Deshaun situation with the Browns, hell, the Saints were ready to offload some picks and some players. I know Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Cesar Ruiz were two names that were talked about to be sent to Houston for Deshaun, if they were to get him. So you look at those situations, you look at the Denver-Seattle situation with Russell Wilson, teams are willing to go above and beyond to get an elite quarterback in the building, because when you have that, it changes everything. It changes the entire conversation. Once you have that Josh Allen, that Mahomes, that Lamar, that Burrow, once he's under center, everything is on the table at that point. Like, you're now a playoff contender at worst. Teams are willing to go beyond that. They're willing to break the bank and go to high hurdles for that. So
yeah. And the Falcons are in a good situation this year or next year financially, where they could front load that contract and not have it hamstring their cap. Like, they could have a lot of flexibility and really be responsible with how they give that contract out. And we'll see. But I think that's something fun to monitor. I mean, I think the chances of it are very low, like less than 10%. But fun to talk about, and because they were so aggressive for quarterback, and because he's such a perfect fit, that's going to be a fun thing to monitor all offseason. And I agree that Calvin Ridley would be a nice pot sweetener as well. So we'll see we'll see if we hear any more buzz on that as the offseason sort of gets going in another couple, few months. Thankfully, we still got actual football going on here. But yeah, guys, before we get to more of that actual football, a reminder to please like and subscribe. We really appreciate that. If you're listening to the audio, give us a 5-star review. And if you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, that's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Discord is in the show description, along with all the links to donate and get involved with all of our other stuff. So thanks so much for that, guys. Let's touch on the roster shuffling this week. We did see Casey Hayward get put on IR. That's obviously some significant, since he played almost all the snaps at the corner position opposite AJ Terrell. What do you think about the loss of Hayward, and who do you see sort of stepping up into his position?
I mean, I think it's a notable loss. I mean, that's, at the very least, it's a veteran voice in the locker room. It's a veteran voice on the field that you have now. It's coming at not an ideal time, and it's coming at a time where you're facing, one of the best passing offenses in the league, in the entire league. But it's something that this team has already seen so far when it came to key names being out for some time. They lost Damian Williams after week 1. Cordero went down, but they found a way to adjust. And I think this is just another opportunity for them to adjust as a team. You're asking guys like D. Alford and Darren Hall to step up. Personally, I think they have north of like $9 million still in cap space right now.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind tapping the well a little bit for a better cornerback and bringing him in. Especially because he's out for 4 weeks at least. We don't know if it's going to be any longer than that. And we see with Damon Williams is probably, with Damon Williams, he's been out for like an extra week or so, right? I don't think he's even been eligible to practice yet. So yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, I'm interested if they would go after anyone. Because we saw Darren Hall come in reserve and had like a great game. Like, I think he had like a 90 PFF grade and broke up like 3 passes and looked awesome. That hasn't necessarily been what we've come to expect from Darren Hall week in and week out. I think they're going to certainly give him an opportunity this week against Cincinnati before they make any other moves. We may see like a practice squad elevation or something like that. But, I don't know what else. I think in terms of available corners, I mean, it's like there's some veterans, sort of.
AJ Bouye came to mind.
Yeah, I certainly like him. UCF grade AJ Bouye.
I wouldn't mind. He's not. I mean, he's only 30.
Yeah,
it's not gray haired in the league.
No, it's not like that. Yeah,
he's a Georgia native as well. So, that's something that they've been doing this all season anyway, right? They've been quietly been bringing in Georgia guys. So
yeah. They got. I mean, there are options like Kevin King, Malcolm Butler, still out there. Janoris Jenkins. Those are
Jack Rabbit would be fun.
Yeah. And then you got Pierre Desir. Oh man, Desmond Trufant reunion. Poor Trufant. He has not had the best couple seasons. No. But yeah, I mean, I think they could tap into that well, but I'm not necessarily expecting them to sign someone unless Darren Hall has like a really bad game or something. So we'll see. Yeah,
I hate for this to be the litmus test. Like, man, you have a bad game against Jamal Chase. Right. We're gonna find somebody to replace. Like, thanks, man. Seriously, like that's Jesus.
Yeah, Robert Alford's available too. That's right.
You know what? I'll go out there for 4 weeks. It's okay, guys.
Yeah, we're all good. Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, I think D. Alford is another guy they could turn to in a pinch because he did play outside cornerback in the CFL. I mean, that's where he's mostly played. So D. Alford is a crazy player to me. Like on that 3rd and 1 at the end of the 49ers game where they stuffed the running back, it was all D. Alford because he was one-on-one with Tevin Coleman, excuse me. And Coleman like cut it back inside because of D. Alford's contain, and he ran it behind his right tackle, and D. Alford just like slips underneath the right tackle and still makes the tackle. Like, because I think if I was Coleman, I would have just been like, you know what, I think I can truck D. Alford, this 175-pound corner, for like a 1-yard gain. I'm just gonna take it outside. But no, he does what he's supposed to do. He goes behind his tackle. And like D. Alford just like slips underneath him and makes the tackle along with Mike Ford. Like this dude's 175 pounds.
He's tougher than nails, man.
I mean, it's crazy. He reminds me of like a Jaquiz Rogers. Just like he doesn't even matter. He's like 5'6". He's just gonna truck everyone in pass pro. So
really good ball skills, underrated ball skills.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he's incorporated. It's time to step up, man. This is what you made the roster for. There's going to be times where you're going to have to be, you're going to be tested. And it's not as if we're playing an offense where, they should be able to, gradually, handle the circumstances, the situation in front of them. But they're coming in and they're getting ready to play the defending AFC champs.
Yeah. And it's almost like magical that like Isaiah Oliver comes back just in time for the Falcons to weather a cornerback injury. We did see Oliver play not a full allotment of snaps, but most of the snaps in the slot. He had that pick.
Right.
And
beautiful pick.
He looks healthy to me, so it's nice to have him back in the slot, certainly. And it sounds like Terrell and Oliver are expected to practice this week, and there's not necessarily a ton of concern for their status. So how big is that instead of being down 3 corners going into the Cincy game, we might just be down Hayward at this point?
I mean, that was clutch. I really, because of the fact how Cincy operates with their slot receivers, it's very beneficial to have a guy like Oliver back in the fold. He's going to be a steady presence in this defense, and having him on the field was just huge. And him getting that pick, that was a very beautiful pick, by the way. I mean, he went outstretched over the defender to get that thing. His play is going to be needed. His playmaking ability is going to be needed this week. And he's probably going to see a lot of Tyler Boyd, maybe a little bit of Higgins every now and then as well. So it's glad he's back for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be baptism by fire for all these guys coming in. And the secret to beating the Bengals has always been getting pressure. I don't know how well the Falcons are going to do with that. They've done great. They've done fine at getting pressure. They haven't done great at getting sacks. So we'll have to see how well that translates. But speaking of pressure, Arnold Ebiketie, I believe third or tied for second in the NFL among rookies for most pressures. I think he has 15 at this point. And it's interesting because he's played, I think, half the snaps of the guys in front of him because he was only a part-time player up until this last week. So what do you think about Ebiketie so far? I remember you being a big fan of his. We were both pretty excited when he got drafted.
Yeah. Ebiketie is one of those. He's one of those prospects coming out of a Penn State where he was just so well-rounded. There's not a ton of red flags when it comes to him. And the name that initially came out to me when I watched him play was Shaq Barrett of the Bucks. That was a guy that I saw a lot of similarities with. You start if you throw on the tape, if you're a football head and you like to watch tape, and I'm not talking about YouTube highlights, if you like to watch actual football tape, throw it on, look at 47. He's out there, man. But there's going to come a time where these pressures turn into sacks.
Yes.
And we're going to need to see that. This is probably a week where I would like to see those pressures turn into sacks.
That would be nice. I mean, yes.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
It would be very much.
It tends to happen. He has an insanely low sack to pressure rate at this point with just one sack to go along with 15 pressures. He's the anti-Vic Beasley.
Yeah. And so, and the thing is, man, there's a lot of little things that he's doing so well, from hand placement to just pass rushing arsenal that he's using, footwork, timing the snap. There's little small things that you're not going to see on the stat sheet. No one's really going to point out unless you actually focus on it in film. He's doing a lot of the small things well, man. I think the Falcons got themselves something here. They got a future double-digit sack artist, in my opinion.
I think he could be, certainly. I think he's a guy that's flashing that kind of ability. And 15 pressures in 6 games is nothing to especially for a part-time player. That's impressive numbers. So I think we're just seeing.
He's got hands up there, man. He's got mess.
Yeah. He's tough. He's tough to handle out there. We got Jason Gaines with the $2. What's up, Jason? He says, nice to see Dante Fowler with the poorly timed offsides for the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Also, shout out to Isaiah Oliver for that interception. And it's always great to beat Shanahan. Fun fact, Falcons now 2-1 against him since he became the 49ers head coach. So Falcons getting the better of Shanahan since he left. So that's what you get, Shanahan, for blowing that Super Bowl. So.
Always wanting to stick it to him, man. Always wanting to stick it to him.
Yep, that's permanent state of affairs here now.
Yeah.
What do you think about how the tight end room is changing now? We did see MyCole Pruitt activated to the roster over the past 2 weeks. Now on the roster, Anthony Firkser deactivated. Felipe Franks remaining active but not getting any offensive snaps. For me, the MyCole Pruitt thing I really like because I've sort of been like, okay, let's stop pretending we have enough targets to go around to all these other tight ends. Like, just get a bunch of blockers out there and be done with it. So I'm happy about that. Pruitt's been very effective as a blocker in his 2 games. Do you think this is maybe the end of the line for Firkser, or is this the end of the Franks experiment, or what do you think is going on at tight end at this point?
I'm hoping the latter, Kevin. I'm hoping the latter.
I don't think that's the case based on who's been active, but
just the door on whatever funky experiment we're trying to do with Franks. Like, this is not working. And this is a problem. This is a problem that I had in the offseason, man. And my thing is, he made the final 53. And my issue is, if he's not going to play special teams extensively, which he isn't.
Yeah, he played like 6 snaps, I think.
Yeah, if he's not going to do that, and he's not going to be like a actual like third QB on the roster on game days, what's the point of having him on the active roster? I don't get it. Like at the practice squad him, just put him out there in practice squad and let him whatever reps he needs, whatever, that's fine. But he's taking up roster spots on game days. And I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
For what? And don't even get me started about the Bucs game. There's no reason why we should be drawing up deep post routes for Felipe Franks, man.
They just so desperately want it to be a thing.
Oh my God. When I saw that, I was like, what the hell are we doing? We're drawing up deep posts for Franks against Antoine Winfield Jr. This is
it is certainly something. It's certainly something out there. Yeah, Franks has played 36 offensive snaps and 18 special team snaps over 6 weeks. So clearly not a big role there.
So why is he here on game days? I don't get it, man.
Well, it's interesting because MyCole Pruitt got 28 offensive snaps already in 2 games compared to 36 on the whole season for Franks. So it seems like Pruitt may have overtaken him. Yeah.
What's been the deal with Frankfurt though? Like, what? I don't think it's an injury. I haven't really focused whole lot of him on film.
Yeah,
but I haven't really seen anything that's like, okay, he's a liability.
No,
I can see why he threw it up. I don't.
I guess it's he doesn't internal. Block. Yeah, he doesn't block.
Right.
And
neither does.
Well, yeah, Franks doesn't block either, but they barely play Franks. But I think it's like, I think they thought if there were more targets to go around, they'd like to have that like second tight end to really chuck the ball to, but that just hasn't been a thing at all. So
if he's not, look, okay, if he doesn't block, great, I get it. He's not the greatest of blockers, but still, I'd rather him be tight end 3 on game days than Franks.
I mean,
I'd rather go that route.
Right. I mean, maybe it should just be maybe it's just MyCole Pruitt though, because he caught the touchdown.
It could, but he can at least. But even if they wanted to go 3 tight ends on game days, at least Fertzer can give you that receiving threat, that receiving ability. You can't get anything from Franks. What are we putting him out there for? He can't block. He's afraid to catch.
He's not ready. Clearly, yeah.
He's not. So just practice squad him. Just.
I guess they're afraid he'll get poached. That's the only reason I could think that he's not on the squad. But. I mean, he hasn't shown any. I mean, it's an odd decision to me. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, clearly Arthur Smith cares. Okay. If he didn't care, he'd be on the practice squad right now. So, it's very interesting, this obsession with Franks. Yeah.
It's not going to set us back as a team if someone takes him off the practice squad. The team will be fine.
Yeah.
The team will be fine.
You're right. But it's just interesting. It's funny that's like the big contentious thing on offense is like, oh, our 53rd roster spot going to Felipe Franks. What the hell's going on? You know,
I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm glad that's what we're mad about this season because it could be way worse. It could be way worse. We're like angry about giving 20 snaps to Felipe Franks over the course of the season.
It could be, they haven't won a game yet. They're 0-6. They haven't won a game yet.
Well, we already beat USA Today's prediction, right? Because we won 3.
Right, because they were only supposed to win because it was the worst roster in the league. Excuse me for the language, my ass. Okay, worst roster. Stop it.
You know, the Texans existed. So
the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. Yeah. Oof. The Bears have been a rough watch. They've been a rough watch.
The Commanders. Are you kidding me?
Yep. I feel like we've gotten Bears in prime time. The Falcons don't get any primetime games. It's really sad.
Yep. They got Monday night coming up.
Yep.
And then Washington has had one.
Yep.
We can't get one. All right, whatever.
No, we might get flexed if we stay like this though. There might be a flex in our future. If they're competitive for the playoffs, like they might flex some of those late season, especially that Week 18 Tampa game. That could be flexed for sure.
I want that game.
Yeah.
I want that game, Kevin.
We need to beat Tom, for God's sake. That's our last chance, maybe. So we got to do it. Like
he's old, okay? He's old.
He's shown weakness.
Lost. Tom Brady. I swear, I had so much respect for Tom Brady before this past game. Like now, I'm like, dude, I don't care what happens to you.
Get him. You know, yeah, we got to take that man down. We got to knock him down a notch. So,
yes. Get every
legally, but
every dollar you can, Giselle. I'm actually cheering for Giselle in this divorce battle here. You go, girl.
Oh god, that's funny. Yeah. No, it's we need to get that dub though. That's our last chance, probably.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we got to get that dub.
What a way to send him off.
That would be
Final
perfect.
season game in a season where he's experienced losses and a divorce. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Good luck with the kids.
Yeah. I do want to get your take on the season as a whole because like this team, I think I don't know what your prediction would have been through these first 6 games. I think for me it was like 2-4, maybe 1-5. I can't remember exactly. So they've already outperformed my expectations. And I think getting this win against San Francisco sort of changes things for them because now in this next 7-game stretch, you just have to go 4-3 to have a winning record. And they play the Bengals. That's a tough game, obviously. But then they play the Panthers twice, the Bears, the Commanders, the Steelers. You know, the only other game that you're probably circling as potential loss that you would be concerned about is the Chargers. And the Falcons will probably be favored in every single other one of these games. So, like, if they go 4-3, they're going to go into that bye week with a winning record at 7-6. And then anything can happen because I think you can go 2-2 in that last 4-game stretch. 9-8 is probably good enough to get that 7 seed in the NFC this year. So,
right.
What do you think about has your opinion on their season-long trajectory changed after this first 6 games?
Not necessarily. I remember after the first 5 games, I had them going 2-3 anyway. I had the only losses that we would have swapped was I had them beating the Saints and I had them losing to the Browns. So those were swapped there. But for the most part, they've been exactly what I expected them to be. I felt like this is a team that may not have been able to make the playoffs, but it's one of those teams that's just scrappy. You hate to play. They find their way in literally just about every game. And that's exactly what they are now. They're one of those teams that's like, they're a feisty bunch. You're supposed to run them off. The Rams were supposed to run them off the floor. Rams couldn't put them away. The Bucks were supposed to annihilate them. The Bucks couldn't put them away. And they took advantage of opportunities against the Niners and the Browns, who I feel are more talented rosters, but they took advantage of those teams having injuries, which happens in the NFL, and they got wins out of it. So I think they're right on point as far as what I expected them to be. I just wanted to see them compete, Kevin. And I think you feel the same way. Like it was just, you knew this was a better roster than last year, but they competed in a lot of games last year. And I wanted to see them compete against some of the better teams in the league this year. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. So I'm fine with what we've seen.
Yeah, I think it's what we were hoping for, to see this team in every single game, really taking it to opponents. I mean, every single game has been within a score except for the 49ers game where they won by 2 scores. So I think this is what we were hoping for. Like, I think in the preseason, we were saying things like, I think this is going to be this, this team could easily be last year's Lions, where they're this sort of frisky team that everybody likes and is really competitive, but they just don't win a lot of games because of the schedule. Now the schedule looks like, oh, wait, like the schedule is actually not as difficult as it appeared in the preseason, and the Falcons are playing better than expected. I mean, they're a top 10 offense, so you take that same thing and flip it around and be like, well, maybe they're not the Lions, maybe they're the Eagles, right?
The Eagles last year,
yeah. Because
go ahead.
They just look like them. Like they're not throwing the ball a lot. They're like one of the top rushing teams in the NFL, and they're winning with sort of opportunistic defense and a really strong run game. I mean, they look like the Eagles from last year.
Yeah. That Eagles team was, again, it was a team that you knew had some holes. They had some scheme questions that you had, but they always made games out of certain opponents, that they were supposed to lose heavily to. And then next thing you know, they're in the wild card game. They got a road wild card game. No one expected that. They went 9-8, right? Yeah. So they went 9-8, got a road wild card game. I think now whether this Falcons team is able to model that. I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
But I think at this point, this is a team they're learning that, hey, we can play with some of these teams, man.
Yeah. I mean, even like for the draft, like getting that 7th seed hurts your draft pick. Depending on how the NFL finishes, that could cost you 6, 7, 8 spots in the draft if you actually get that 7 seed. But I think that it's worth it to get it because you need to get this roster playoff experience, even if it's just one wild card game that you don't win.
Yeah.
Getting these guys some playoff experience this year would be big for the future. And they're going to have to go on the road in that game and play the number 2 seed, whoever that is. And it's going to be a game where they're probably going to be big underdogs, right? So no one's necessarily expecting them to make noise, but I love the 7th seed in that game because it's like you're playing with house money. Like you're the 7th seed going against the 2. No one expects anything from you. If the 2 seed loses, they're embarrassed. If you lose, it's like, oh well, you just made the playoffs, and no big deal. Great job. So I love that scenario, and I think we'd all enjoy this team in the playoffs, even if it's ultimately a doomed exercise with this roster. It's always fun to make the playoffs. So I think, and it's going to be fun to track. I mean, hopefully they stay in the mix all season this year instead of last year where they eventually got out of it after dropping a bunch of games. But I mean, this team could, depending on if the Bucs recover from their slump, like this team could easily be challenging for the division lead at 9-8. Like it could be they go into that Tampa game with 9 wins and the winner of that game wins the division, or something like that. So,
man, would that be something?
That how far we've come,
and then against Julio if he plays.
Yep.
Man,
probably
that
not.
Would be...
Sorry. I feel so bad for Julio. That man just can't get on the field.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It's very tragic. We still have a pick from him coming this year. I believe it will actually be the Titans' 4th rounder and not their 4th comp because they do not have a comp pick. So, so that'll even be better. So we're still raking in returns from that Julio trade.
Oh, we won that trade.
Yeah.
The moment that he left Tennessee, I was like, yep, winners. We got that one. We fleeced them, guys. Good job.
I mean, everyone was upset about it, but great job. This is proof that we didn't know exactly what was going on. We had to guess and play games with the pick, so I do want to give us some, leeway with trying to prognosticate without all the information because they don't give us all the information and I don't blame them. But, we can't be trusted with those sort of takes. Nope. But yeah, it's been really interesting to monitor. And the Falcons, I think, are far more exciting than any of us thought they would be at this point. They've basically been as good as we could hope. And I think I'm expecting this team to continue to stay interesting. Like, I think it was around the NFL's Greg Rosenthal said that the Falcons have graduated from feisty to spicy now. So, so yeah, I mean, I think we're there. Like, this is a spicy team.
I do want to slow down the talks that some people have. Though there are some analysts who are starting to run away with this thing, and I'm like,
they're getting very excited about Atlanta, and that's nice. But like, please relax.
This is usually when we come on, as Falcons fans, we know usually when this happens, the team goes into a funk, and then everybody's like, "See, I told you that's who they were," and I'm like, "You guys, you did this." Like, so just ease up. I'd rather take it week by week, game by game.
I mean, something feels different though, right? Like this team does feel different to me. Does it feel different to you?
It's up here. It's like it's the little things that you see. It's like your coach chugging beers with the offensive line at the end of the game because they made because you know what I read into that. They knew in that Saturday walkthrough that the 49ers were going to be down some players.
Yeah.
So the mentality was, oh man, you know what? We're gonna run it down their throats. They have their starters are out. Oh, we're gonna bully them. That's how I looked at it. And they felt that mentality and they said, you know what, coach, we feel so good that we about to bully this second team 49ers that we'll bet you that you have a beer with us at the end of the game. It's the mentality. It's those little things.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like those games against the Rams and against the Bucks in the past, we would have been embarrassed. But they crawled their way back in it, and they had an opportunity to win the game in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
There's a different mindset with this team.
Yeah, I think that's what feels different is last year when they went up against some of these really good teams, they just got their asses kicked. Like, I mean, they weren't competitive. Against teams that were on their level or worse, they generally beat them, so that's nice. Yeah. And I think that's a symptom of good coaching generally, like you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. But like they did not put up a fight against the better teams. And the difference is this year they put up a fight against everyone, and they can beat anybody. They're not just getting blown off the turf by superior rosters. They're playing them tough, and we'll see if that continues. I mean, I suspect at some point that they will lose by more than one score. It would be difficult for them to have, 17 one-score games this year, but the way they play and how efficient they are on offense with a limited number of plays and very few passing attempts, like they naturally sort of shorten games, and they naturally limit opportunities for their opponent through the run game and through the defense taking the ball away. I think they're like 5th in takeaways this year. So they're doing all the right things for a team to punch above their weight, and we'll see how far that'll take them. But for now, I think it's pretty exciting. It's been fun to watch, and I certainly think there's an opportunity for them to really like surprise and potentially sneak into the playoffs. And we're not saying this to be like, oh, everybody get hyped, it's time for the playoffs. It's just like, I think you can look at the schedule now and how things have softened up and say this is not far-fetched. Like, we're probably looking at this being like a 1-4 shot at them making the playoffs now, or before the year it was like single digits, or something like that. So, how they perform over this next 7 games is really important. If they can get a win against Cincinnati, then you feel really good about their chances. But even if they lose, I don't think that changes anything for me. I'm expecting this to be an L. Obviously hoping for it not to be, but I think you'd be wise to go into this expecting a loss. But then you've got this 6-game stretch where you should win at least 4 of those games, if not more. So they'll be favored in 5 of those games, I imagine. So it's fun. It's fun to have this look ahead, and I'm hoping we'll finally see this team get a damn winning record. If it's not this week, hopefully in a couple more weeks. But they haven't had a winning record since 2017, Eric.
Whew.
Like, not even for a week.
Haven't been above 500 since then.
Yep. So I think we'll get it. I think we'll get it around week 10, maybe exactly week 10. But I wouldn't be upset if it happened this week. Certainly.
I would not be upset either. But I'm kind of sort of along with you where it's like, yeah, I think the opponent may get the better of them in this week. But I will say they're 6-point underdogs.
Yep.
Remember, they're undefeated against the spread this year.
Great teams cover.
So that bodes well. This may look like it may be a 1-score game or a tight game at some point in the fourth quarter. We'll see. But yeah, I feel I can see and I can feel the mentality of this team changing, and it's definitely encouraging for the future. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm very interested to see how they end up finishing the season out and how this goes, because I think so far you can tell that the mood around the team has already sort of changed completely, and there's still time for them to blow it. But I mean, it just doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like previous years. Like last year, they were like 4-4 at one point, but I think we all knew that was fraudulent. Like, I think we all felt it, and it was like, they're starting to win games, but like, I just don't trust. I don't trust it. This year, they're only 3-3, but I feel like everyone's like, oh yeah, because you like what you see. Like, you like what you see on offense. They've dominated against the run pretty much every game. They've been able to get takeaways. The defense is only 19th this week. Like last year, they were like the last ranked team in DVOA like all year, even when they were like 500. And it was like everything is screaming at us that this record is fraudulent. Their point differentials like minus 100, that sort of thing. This year,
not to mention talent wise, we just like, okay, they're not as good. They were a bottom 5 roster last year. Yes. I'm not believing that talk this year. It's not a bottom 5 roster this year.
Yeah, and last year they did not have, I think, a positive point differential at any point last year. After last week, they are now plus 10. So, because of this win over the 49ers. So, I think all of the signs, the records are the same, more or less, but all of the signs are pointing to this team is actually better, maybe even than their record suggests, or they actually are legitimately at this level, as opposed to last year. The DVOA said they were awful. The point differential said they were awful. And they just managed to win close games because of, Matt Ryan pulling out some miracles and Younghoe Koo being awesome. This year, they're not really depending on that. They're sort of playing their game and getting it done. And they look a lot better. I think DVOA likes them a lot. Like, I think they have them 15th overall and like 3rd in offense, or they're quite high on offense, I think.
They're third overall in offensive DVOA.
Yeah, which is nuts. So I trust those stats. Yeah, I trust those stats. Like, I trust DVOA to tell us, like, stats. Regular stats can lie. They can be obscured. They can not tell you the full story. Their counting stats are good and they do tell you a lot, but they don't get into the nitty gritty of stuff. DVOA gives you the full story. It's basically taking everything in context. That's how it works. So for them to be 3rd in offensive DVOA, I think that this team is legitimately a really good offense.
Right.
Even though they can't throw the ball, or they don't throw the ball much at all. So it's pretty crazy to me.
Imagine if that wrinkle was exercised and they're able to actually stress defenses that way. Imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll see it.
We'll see.
I think we'll see it at some point this year. I think they want to unlock that, and maybe it will be Mariota taking that next step. Maybe it'll be Desmond Ritter coming in at some point. But as long as they hit it, I don't care who's the quarterback. I don't have a dog in this fight. I do not
I don't care.
I love Desmond Ritter, but I was happy with the Mariota signing, and we just want this team to win. So whoever can get it done, go get it done, and don't look back.
I don't care either. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just win games.
Yeah.
I don't care how it's done. Even though nowadays it's looking like, it's not necessarily sloppy, but it's not those pretty wins. It's those gritty wins where they're punching back. And that's all I care about.
Yeah. So
that's all I care about.
Yeah, me too. Just win, baby, right? Doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be glorious, doesn't have to, you don't have to light up the scoreboard with passing yardage. You could throw 14 attempts a game and grind it out with 150 yards rushing and win these low-scoring games. That's fine, as long as you win. So,
I just want teams to look at the Falcons on the schedule and say, damn, we got to play them.
I don't think anyone wants to play this team, to be honest with you. I think defenses are, dreading this game. They're going to run the ball 40 damn times. We're going to be so sore after this game. We are going to get clobbered.
If they don't feel that way now, I want them to feel that way later on in the year where there's a little bit more wear and tear on the body. The season gets older. It's cold outside November, December.
Yeah.
You gotta tackle Tyler Algier or Cordero Patterson for 4 quarters.
Yep. And the thing about the Falcons offense too that we didn't even touch on is every single player has a blocking assignment. And it's not just wide receiver, go out there and get in the way. It's no, Drake, you crash down on that guy. You crack this guy. Zacchaeus, you're coming across and you're going to crack this guy. Parker Hesse and Keith Smith are both coming out of the backfield to lay out somebody. They're hitting guys every play, at every position. Even Kyle Pitts had a key run block last week. I think it was on Huntley's big run. Yeah.
Can you imagine how they will look once Cordero and Damian Williams are back in the fold?
Man.
And we're just adding more horses to the stable. I think it's going to be, because someone asked me this question yesterday as well, is that going to impact, the carries for each player? And I think going forward, I would not be surprised if you see a lot more games where the leading rusher has a dozen carries.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it was brought up that right now the Falcons have 4 players on track for 100 carries, and that's never happened before in franchise history. It's Mariota, Patterson, Algier, and Huntley all are on track for 100 carries. So And
Yeah,
just
I would
why
not.
not? When you have a 30, like an over 30-year-old running back, like just he doesn't need to carry it 20 times. Like
Right.
just mix it in. Yeah.
We know he's even if he carries it 25 times, he's dangerous. But we know he's equally dangerous, in my opinion, when he only has 5 or 6 carries going into that fourth quarter, and now you got to try to tackle him.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with Patterson is like he's that Derrick Henry runner that doesn't need the 15 carries in the first quarter to heat up. Like he's like, no, that's fine. Like I'll we're gonna switch off. We'll have Patterson for a drive, then we'll have Huntley for a drive, then we'll have Algier for a drive, and then at the end of the game, it's just Patterson destroying you after you've already taken 20 carries from other running backs. And he's completely fresh. So
that's gonna be fun. Oh my God, it's gonna be fun. Hurry up and get back, please.
Yeah. I mean, he looks ready now. Maybe they didn't need to put him on IR.
There's no way they can. Yeah, they can't do that, right? Like they can't.
No, it has to be 4 weeks. But I mean, I'm sure they didn't want to rush him back. Like they wanted to make sure he was healthy.
No, I get it.
Got to be healthy for the playoff run, Eric.
I just as a well, I just
no one
know
would have said that 4 weeks ago, but yeah.
I just know as a guy that played on defense before, man, like those are the little things. Those are the things you hate. You hate not being able to identify where the playmakers are on an offense, and you hate when you're exhausted. It's the fourth quarter, and you are facing a team that likes to run the football. That you absolutely hate that, because that means you gotta tackle this running back that you've been trying to tackle for 4 quarters already, and you got to do it again now when you're beat up. That's not fun, man. It's not fun.
Yeah, and we barely even seen what Damian Williams can do. So,
right, and then you remember he started the season opener, so I think the team kind of sort of had like a actual plan for Damian Williams, where he was going to be a key focal point in this rushing attack.
Yeah, and I think like Damian Williams with whatever the Falcons are doing, I think it's like 3.7 yards before contact. Like Damian Williams is very dangerous getting that much space. Like. So he's another dynamic runner. And right now we're seeing this Falcons offense really succeed with like 2 hammers. And they don't have they have the Thunder right now. They don't even have the Lightning. It just doesn't matter. They're like, that's fine. Right. Mariota and Avery Williams like 2 times can be our Lightning and we'll make do.
Right.
But it's a fun offense to watch. It's creative. And there was an article on Big Blue View, which is the SB Nation's Giants site, where it talked about like, are the Falcons and Giants, who are both have really, I think, smart offense coordinators, Brian Dable, Arthur Smith, both teams doing much better than expected, both running this run-heavy, low-passing volume offense. Like, are they doing this out of necessity only, or are they really sort of showing the NFL the blueprint for the future, which is that as teams go to this too high shell on defense and these lighter fronts and having more and more DBs out there going to these hybrid safety linebackers and all this, like, is the solution to that what the Falcons and Giants are doing? And these are actually the trend-setting offenses that teams are going to try to copy. Like, is the future going with a Jalen Hurts, going with a Desmond Ritter, Marcus Mariota type guy, and just running the ball and not breaking the bank for a top quarterback and doing that? Like, I don't know. Is that maybe that will become more of a viable situation as the quarterback contracts continue to eat more and more of the salary cap?
I think part of it is I want to say yes, because I think it's in today's game, let's be honest, I think it's a little easier to find those type of quarterbacks, those dual threats, those ones that can be able to do a number of things and might not be exceptional in any category. I think it's a little easier to find than out here trying to find the next Patrick Mahomes. Like that's not everybody. I mean, it is a copycat league. However, you're like you just pointed out, you're starting to see it a little bit more. You're starting to see these offenses kind of sort of expand to that, where we're running the football and we're running the football with our quarterback. We're designing plays with our quarterback. We're designing different formations, and we're centering it around that. I think you can see that. Yeah. I think it could be a thing.
I think so. I'm interested to see how the NFL adapts to it, but they can't fully adapt, right? Because they still have to deal with the Bills and the Chiefs, these offenses that are going to blast you through the air, and you have to play too high. So I think maybe it's just going to diversify the NFL more, and we're going to see some teams go with this Eagles Falcons Giants sort of strategy of run heavy, play action, and that being very successful. And then some teams continuing to, I don't think the passing game is going away or anything. It's just like maybe there's going to be,
going away.
Yeah, maybe there's going to be more viable strategies. Because for a while it seemed like teams were like, the run just doesn't even matter. We're just going to go all in on passing, whatever. And now maybe this year with scoring down, it's like, well, maybe the run game, when used well, when used intelligently.
All it's going to take, Kevin, all it's going to take is a run heavy scheme like this to truly like knock out the high octane offenses in the playoffs. Like that's all it's going to take. If you see a situation where this run heavy scheme goes on a run in the playoffs and they beat like a scheme like this beats the Bills and the Chiefs in the playoffs, then you might see the league saying, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see this. I see how this works. That's all it's going to take.
No, I think so. And we're also seeing sort of as much as we both love Matt Ryan, and we're both big Matt Ryan fans and nothing bad to say about him, it's clear that this offense desperately needed a mobile quarterback, partially because Arthur Smith just wants to utilize that. Also because the offensive line, while they've improved a lot at run blocking, still very bad at pass blocking. So, that I think has really been the key as well. Like, I think it is a downgrade at quarterback overall, but because Mariota does the things you need him to do in this offense, which is escape pressure very easily because he's going to see a lot of it and run,
It's an upgrade for the offense, for the scheme, for the play call.
For the scheme. Yep.
Nothing against Matt Ryan, and tip of the cap to Matt Ryan for passing Dan Marino on the all-time passing list this past Sunday. Yep. He's now 7th overall. Just go ahead, and get that gold jacket ready for him because he's gonna look nice in it when it's all said and done.
Yep, exactly. So it's been really interesting to watch this team really change its identity completely. And I think it's a much more fun team to watch and a much more successful team. So definitely excited to see that going down. Excited to have Eric back on the show. He is Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson. Eric, any final takes before we wrap things up tonight?
Man, you know what? I'm not going to give a score prediction. But I think we already kind of sort of leaned in this direction early in the show. I think the Bengals are going to win, are going to take the dub this weekend, this Sunday. But I do think it's going to be a close game. Yeah. I think it's going to be a 4-quarter fight. And I think that run game is definitely going to hit its mark. And I think, I think this defense, if they're not creating turnovers, I think this defense is going to be able to create some plays with their front seven. And I think this is going to be an interesting game. We may look at this and it's 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Bengals fans are looking at this game like we're still. Like this is still a 1-score game. We're still fighting these guys. I think that's honestly what we're going to see on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be an unpleasant game for the Bengals. I do think they're going to be able to score, but I think the Falcons are just going to be constantly clawing back. Like you and I both mentioned it. Like they just allowed 228 yards on the ground to the Saints.
Without DJ Ritter.
The Falcons' run offense is a lot better than the Saints. The Saints have players certainly, but it's been very inconsistent. The Falcons have consistently put up yardage on every run defense they played, including the good ones. This is not a good run defense. And I think the Falcons know that, and they're going to go after them. And I think it all comes down to, like you said, does the defense create turnovers? Because I think if the Falcons get some turnovers, like if the Falcons get out to a lead, they're going to be really difficult for teams to handle. Like, you have to be really careful, and you start wondering almost if the Falcons start taking the ball first in some of these games against these higher scoring opponents. I'm always team defer personally. I think I just like that.
Been doing that most part, right?
I think they have when they've taken the ball in the second half, but you do wonder if against some of these higher scoring offensive, they do opt to take the ball first and try to have a long drive, score a touchdown, and really set the tone for the game. But I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, but I do wonder if against a higher scoring offense, if they would consider doing that. But it's going to be a good one. I'm excited to see it. I don't dread these games anymore. Like I think going into the season, it was like some of these games, it's like, oh, I'm just waiting for this team to get clobbered. Oh, it's gonna be great. It hasn't happened at all. Like they haven't really ever
Right.
gotten clobbered. I think the Rams game was unpleasant for most of it, but the end was not bad.
Put them away.
So it was it's been a much more fun season, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. That this team is going to be in contention each and every week. And whether they end up closing out the playoffs or they're just really frisky or spicy, they've graduated to spicy now. I think that's a good outcome for this season, and I'm excited to see if they can continue this momentum. And really, I think it's important too. Like if they do go get a winning record or sneak into the playoffs, that helps them so much next year when they have all this money and they need to convince guys to come here. And now they can say, hey, we're not this team with a top 5 pick that's rebuilding. It's like, no, we're an up and coming offense. We just need a couple of guys to take us over the top. Like that's a lot easier to pitch.
Not even talking about having a guy like Lamar Jackson in the fold. Just winning and having money can attract some free agents that next offseason as well. So absolutely.
Yeah,
I can see that playing out as well, where a couple of free agents that you didn't expect are like, yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Like I said, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Really appreciate that. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. He is Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson. Anything you want to plug, Eric, before we take off?
Check out the Falcoholic, one-stop shop for everything you need for all Falcons content. Give it a look. I know those guys over there are just turning out great content that you're not going to get pretty much anywhere else, to be honest with you. So falcoholic.com.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. Thanks to Eric for coming on. We will see you guys next on Friday morning for the game preview for week 7. That's when that'll be up on video and audio. And then, of course, post-game for the post-game show following the Bengals game. Until then, guys, thanks for tuning in to Falcoholic Live this evening. We will see you next time. Have a great night, folks.